Step outside.
Ya'ate, kia ora, talofa lava. Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, all of us Indigenous people out there and all others, welcome. First off, we'd like to go ahead and get started by acknowledging our traditional owners and ancestors of the tribal lands we are now. Oka, Poke, Owinge, Santa Fe. We are residing on the lands, and thank you, ancestors, for blessing us and our Pueblo relations all around us, 19 all around us, the 19 Pueblos all around us. This evening, this is our second Indigenous Ways Circle event for this season, fall, and we're honored to have Miss Christie Abeyta, who is Pueblo and is the superintendent of the Santa Fe Indian School. And Miss Abeyta believes that every student is a valued member of the Santa Fe Indian School and to their home communities. And we are so honored to have Miss Abeyta. Please welcome Miss Christie Abeyta. All right, so let's kick this off with the first question. Who are you, and tell us about yourself? Yate.
Guwati hopa, singiti, ubi akindi, navit oa hawe o jeep o queen kashanak shotsunahana. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is, in Keres, is White Corn Maiden, and I'm of the Fox clan. In Santa Clara Pueblo, I am a Badger clan, and my traditional native name is Frozen Ice Lake. And so I come from multiple Pueblo communities. My parents' parents were from two separate Pueblo communities, and so it kind of spread me throughout north and south, up and down the Rio Grande. And so I have a large family that extends, both on my paternal and my maternal sides. But I have been a lifelong member of Santa Fe Indian School. I grew up in Santa Clara Pueblo. I moved to Santa Domingo Pueblo in my I'm pretty old, but in my early 30s, to care for my grandparents. My grandparents at that time were in their 80s, and they needed help. And, the cultural responsibility that we inherit as Native people, Indigenous people, is that responsibility to care for our elders just in the same ways that they cared for us throughout our life. And so I gave to them what I could, and I spent 12 years in Santa Domingo, where I was able to learn and really embrace the Keresan culture, and to build those relationships with my mother's paternal family in Kewa Pueblo is what we call it. And so through those experiences, growing up in Santa Clara Pueblo, which is north of Santa Fe, and then later in life in Santa Domingo, I've had a wide array or spectrum of cultural experiences, all that have guided who I am today and have helped to build my identity and strengthen my leadership skills along the way. I am an educator. I've been an educator all my life. I started working for tribal summer youth programs, teaching kids how to play basketball, board games, just, building those relationships again. I went to University of New Mexico, and I received an undergrad in secondary education. I'm certified history teacher focusing on Native studies. Came to Santa Fe Indian School. I have a rich history here. My uncle was actually the first superintendent of Santa Fe Indian School, Joseph Abeyta, and served as the superintendent here for 32 years. And so my father was a coach here, and so I grew up here. This was my second home. And so to be on the path I am. It really has been full circle. And part of that, has been the gifts of the Creator, and how, our ways of knowing, our ways of living, and prayer and sacrifice and all that, all the core values that are passed on to us as we're growing up, as we're learning and experiencing life, have really been, for me, at the forefront of all I do. And I guess, I wake up every morning saying, oh my God, I'm the first woman superintendent of Santa Fe Indian School. And, when I applied, I thought to myself, asking Creator, whoever gets the job, I love this school. I want the best for this school. Bring the best person to us to help guide us and lead us into the future, never thinking it would ever be me. And so every morning I have to pinch myself and say, whoa, I'm the superintendent. I have a huge responsibility. We have about, I guess I can talk about the demographics later, but we serve Pueblo, Navajo, Apache, and several other tribes here at our school. And so, as the first superintendent, there is a huge responsibility. And I think one of the things that has guided me in these last 4 months, as I've, stepped into this role, has been my faith. My belief in our spirit and the deities that we pray to, the Creator, and that, I ask for strength. I ask for strength every morning and pray for our students every day, that they're well, that they're safe, that they're socially and emotionally content and at peace, and ask that they open their minds and their hearts, and they come into their classrooms and into their learning spaces. And so, that's really who I am as an educator. I'm a student focused. Everything that we do and we plan for here at Santa Fe Indian School is with our students at the center of our heart. And so I think that's what sets us apart from a lot of schools. We're unique in that way, and we're going to continue to grow from that, and continue to build out programming and planning that supports our student need and interest.
Wow, that is so awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of the Santa Fe Indian School?
Yeah, so, the history of Santa Fe Indian School really begins with in 1889, with Santa Fe Indian School serving as initially a federal Indian boarding school. As we all know, as Indigenous people, those Indian boarding schools were not intended to uplift or to teach and to nurture and to love and support our Indigenous brothers and sisters in those days, but really was intended to break us and to remove all that was important to us, our culture, our language, our ways of knowing, our faith, and our ceremonial practices. And so that school here that our campus now rests on, started in 1889 and closed in 1932. And it was really after the Merriam Report, and if, those of you who aren't historians, Lewis Merriam was charged to investigate not only Indian boarding schools, but tribal communities throughout the United States. And through that investigation, there was some glaring disparity and really sad and horrible situations that Indigenous people across the United States were living through. And a lot of it was as a result of forced Indian policy. With the Indian policy in that time was really intended to, one, first exterminate us, right? That didn't work. We fought back, we held strong. Then it was to relocate us, right? They couldn't kill us, so they were going to move us, and through that relocation, many tribes, many people lost their lives, lost their homelands, lost that place, that cultural, that traditional, and that sacred place that Creator had brought to them, and they had lived, since time immemorial, most tribes back then. But as a result of some of those glaring, situations and what was uncovered through the investigation, there was an intentional effort to close these schools for the atrocities. And I think a lot of it was so that they could save themselves from being placed under the spotlight, and in that time and in that moment be exposed for the horrific treatment of so many of our brothers and sisters and grandmas and grandpas that went untold. The situation in Canada is one that it was just so heartbreaking, and to hear that this is 100+ years later, and we're just now finding out the realities of what this Indian policy brought forth to many communities. And so the history of the original Santa Fe Indian School is a very grim history. We have the elders that talk about running away. We have the elders who talk about how they were scolded and hit and just punished for speaking their language, and how they would cry every Christmas or after every harvest when they were brought to school riding the wagon, and just torn because they were leaving what was the most important thing to them, and that was their family, their community, their culture and tradition. And so my grandma was here at Santa Fe Indian School. She didn't last long. She had to return home, and when she lost her mother at a young age to care for her brothers and sisters. And I think that's a lot of the history of those Indian boarding schools that we know because we hear them. We've lived them through our grandparents or our great grandparents and their experiences. Santa Fe Indian School today is very different, and I am just blessed to be a part of this school. Santa Fe Indian School, as we know it today, was established in 1977 as one of the first 93-638 contract schools in America. The school was contracted from the federal government and was and is now and has been currently owned and operated by our 19 Pueblo governors and tribal councils. And so from that day of inception, the vision and mission of Santa Fe Indian School was to create programming that would support, that would embrace, that would really focus on student need, Pueblo Native cultural tradition, language, aspects of learning that we knew and we know and we continue to know of those ways of knowing of our children. How do Indian children learn a skill, right? For educators who have taught in public schools to non-native populations, it may be that, okay, you give them a skill and you ask them to repeat and to memorize, to regurgitate, right? And after time and doing it consistently over and over and over again, it somehow finds its place in their mind. Well, Indigenous people can do that, a million times, but if it doesn't have any purpose, if it doesn't relate or isn't relevant to them, then it's in and out, right? It comes and goes. And so all of which we have considered in terms of how we've developed our program. How are we incorporating Indigenous ways of knowing? How do we focus on hands-on, community-based instruction, experiential learning, language, culture, celebrating our gifts of the Creator to enhance an experience that uplifts the students to want to do more? Right. Want to be motivated to excel and to find their drive. And so, I can't be any more grateful, and I just left the legislature today, meeting with the Indian Affairs interim finance committee, right? And we're working on securing some funds to expand our school program, expand with classroom space and a performing arts. And one of the guys that was working with us tells us, "Gee, Superintendent, you're really working hard. We see, the things are falling into place." And he was, really excited about our meeting. And I tell him, "Well," I said, "it's because half of my day is working hard, doing all the administrative stuff of the school, and the other half is prayer." That balance is what's guiding us, and I have a strong belief, and here at the school, we honor that. We find, spaces and places for our students to be able to practice ceremony in terms of prayer and in terms of that connection, that is very important for Indigenous people, because it gives us that strength, right? It provides that hope. It motivates us to want to do better, to want to impact and influence positive change.
Right on. That is so amazing. And the thing that I want to ask you, I've got a lot of things I want to ask, a lot of questions I want to ask you. But what keeps glaring at me is, as the first Pueblo woman, superintendent of the Santa Fe Indian School, can you tell us a little bit of history of the woman in the history of the Pueblo? Like, have you all been patriarchal forever, or what happened before the colonizers came? And was it the Spanish that... What happened with that whole relationship?
Historically, from what we know is that all Indigenous communities, tribes, from north down into, South America and all the Western Hemisphere Indigenous people have been matriarchal societies, and it has had, some have had a different experience as it pertains to the colonization of our people. I know that the Hopi have maintained their matriarchal society. Navajo is a matriarchal society as well. But here in the Pueblo region, there was such a plight for the existence of our people that we made extreme accommodations in order to maintain our homelands. We're one of the only tribes in the United States that have remained on their original homelands since their migration to those places and through our traditional creation stories. And so that our place is very sacred, as all Indigenous people have a relationship to place. And so I think as part of that process and as part of that building of relationships and accommodating Spanish systems, whether that's the Ripramento or Enquiamendo systems, which really were harsh and brutal systems of patronage where, Pueblo people were slaves. They were enslaved, by the colonizers. And then it wasn't till after our traditional ceremonial kivas and places of worship were being destroyed and sacred objects being, burned, and that Pueblo people made some, sacrifices. And part of those sacrifices were these changes, right? That said, okay, we'll meet you in this, right? You need a governing system and a system that reflects a system that which is that colonizer with the governor and with, he had his aides and whatnot. And so those were lieutenant governors and, this whole structure that was very foreign and shifted the traditional cultural systems that had been in place since time immemorial. And, most Pueblo communities, even though the tribal governance structure is male, the clanship is still matriarchal. And so I would say, as I was speaking to earlier, in my opinion, that system is probably the most important system within our communities, because that system fosters our children from that day of birth and the acceptance of community, where people come and accept the baby and offer prayers and blessings and gift that baby with something special, and to welcome them into this world. But not only that, but throughout each life cycle, until we go back to the spiritual world, that clanship is an important aspect of teaching and learning and ceremony and all that we believe as a way of life.
That is so wonderful that you have that history, that you have that her story, and that you're able to impart that information for those of us that don't have those kinds of answers. We certainly can't find them in history books. But since and you're sharing that with us, that's very wonderful. So back to the school, based on I'm trying to think of a really nice way to say atrocities, but based on the way the school system was set up through the BIA and all that, what are your students' expectations now based on the history they've heard all these years from their grandparents, their great-grandparents, their great-great-grandparents? I mean, going back, I did the math, it looks like about 132 years ago since the school was established. The kids now, I know your curriculum incorporates, as you said earlier, language and culture and the importance of having an identity walking into the world when they grow up as of 18 and going out into the world. What are the kids' expectations now, and how do they relate that to the past oral history they learned from their forefathers and mothers?
Well, I'm just going to turn on this light because it's getting dark and I have my
thank you.
I think the one blessing that I can attribute this to is the fact that we had such strong visionaries. Our Pueblo leaders envisioned something better for their kids. And in that vision, it was thinking through what was that past experience that forced students to walk away from an educational system, that forced them to run away from school back then, and how do we embrace a school and a vision that is going to attract students to it, because it's what everybody dreams of. And that's how I see our school. But the expectation from our elders is with that understanding that Santa Fe Indian School today isn't the Santa Fe Indian School of the Federal Indian Boarding School era, but is something totally and completely different. And the expectation is that they embrace that educational opportunity, that they embrace the time and the experiences that are afforded to them here. And so it comes with not only an expectation to do well, but with the advice and the direction of that home community that is grounded in traditional core values of love, compassion, honesty, integrity. I think of, like, from my own existence, it's sacrifice, right? It's giving of yourself, it's giving back, it's helping and working together. Pueblo people are communal people. We've been communal people since time immemorial. And all of those aspects of community really drive our curriculum and drive our school program, and are embedded in so many ways that, you don't really understand that you're doing it from a cultural perspective. And even some of our non-native, employees and family that we've embraced here. You talked about Coach Morrison. I mean, she's practically Pueblo, and she's only been here a couple of years.
That's right.
And so,
love her.
Yeah, she's amazing, and I need to thank her for this. This is a great segment. I appreciate you.
Yeah, well, she's here tonight, her and Penny. We love you, Terry and Penny. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for recommending Miss Abeyta for us. But I have a bunch of more questions, but did you want to show us a slide presentation before we move on to the next questions, or are we just going to cruise?
We can just talk.
Okay.
I did a
right.
PowerPoint, but we can talk.
Okay, that's awesome. So the other thing that you touched on towards the end of the last question was the Native American teachers and curriculum and encouragement for the students to embrace their identity and feel a sense of belonging, while at the same time learning this ancient old Eurocentric education system that came to this country how many years ago, and how to blend that. So why is it important to have Native American teachers for the students? And furthermore, why is it important to have allies as well embraced in your school as family? For example, some of your non-Indigenous instructors and coaches and stuff like that. How does that balance work out for you on your campus?
Well, and one of the reasons I went into education was because growing up, I didn't have a lot of Native teachers. In my elementary school, we had two Native teachers. It was a small school, but predominantly non-Native. And when I think about that experience that I had with those traditional Native Indigenous teachers, it was a different experience, and it's hard to pinpoint the differences, and I am careful because I had some amazing non-Native teachers. I think that what stands out to me about having Native teachers is that there's a level of understanding that exceeds any type of relationship or teaching that a non-Native or non-Indigenous teacher has, only because our experiences as Indigenous people are rooted in experiences of our life, that when you can talk to somebody who knows exactly what you're talking about, being at the plaza, being at the plaza for a feast day or for a traditional dance, and being there in the moment and space and time all day, and saying, did you see so-and-so dancing? Or did you see they were making fun of so-and-so, and it was so cold and my cheeks were so red because the wind was blowing, and I didn't, all those things. And they're like, yeah, we saw you, or we saw you dancing, you danced so nice. And getting those blessings from you, because that's what we do. We share our blessings, right? And they can do that, and it's meaningful, and it's deep in this experience that really forges together a lifelong relationship. And those two Native teachers in elementary are still very close to me, and have been inspirations to me I came to Santa Fe Indian School as a 7th grader. It's a 712 program, graduated from Santa Fe Indian School in 1992. And one of the things that a non-native teacher said to me one time was, my nickname's Cree, and he said, Cree, you know what? He said, you need to be a teacher. And I said, why are you saying that? I said, are you saying that because my dad's a teacher? My dad was a teacher. And I come from a family of educators. And I said, I want to be a wildlife ranger. I want to be out in the forest and I want to live with Mother Nature. That was
Right
my
on.
vision.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what? He said, you're a leader. He said, you have a way of influencing your classmates and getting them to do things. And I see you as a teacher and a leader. And your people need to see people like you in those roles because there's very few. And I started, and we had the conversation went on, and I started thinking, whoa, how many Native teachers did I have? And what was the difference, and how can I influence, right? And back then I was a naughty girl, so I was probably influencing them to get into trouble. But at the end of the day, I found my path. Creator put me back on my path, and the teaching came natural. It was such a natural thing for me, and I saw the importance because I saw the lack of Native teachers and how, I looked for those role models. I looked for those teachers, and I said, well, where are they? Where are they? We have so few, and yet inherently women are teachers. We're teachers, and the moment our children are born, throughout their lives, we're teaching them and they're learning, right? And so, it just seemed natural of our women and myself, and it has been a really important journey, and not only, I shouldn't say journey, but it's been an important goal of mine, is to begin to start to build capacity of Native teachers, because our students need that. They need to see themselves in those leaders. They need to see themselves in those teachers. They need to see people who look like them, people who think like them, people who can relate to them in all those spaces.
Yep, that's right. And as you were talking, I had this vision of this teacher I had in 6th grade in Chin Lee. And he was a Hopi, Mr. Scott. And I always remember him because he was such a good teacher. But yeah, those indigenous role models are just the world to us, and we don't forget them because they impacted us. Even though I'm Navajo and he's Hopi, he was a good teacher, and I was in 6th grade.
Yeah.
So we've been through an incredible whirlwind of COVID changes on a global scale, and certainly with our tribes. And we've had untimely deaths that we've had to been forced to accept. How has your school been impacted by the isolation and the virtual learning and sending all the kids home to their pueblos, and the Navajos and the Apaches and all others with laptops, and then bringing them back into the school, and then some of the parents not wanting the kids back and some wanting them back, and the dorm situation? How has all that impacted your school, the recovery from COVID? And we're really still in it.
Right, we are. We've taken a cautionary approach to reopening. We have to convince 19 different leadership and communities anytime we make these types of big decisions, along with our board of trustees, who are our governing body. But for the educators, for the teachers, for the administrators, for the people who lived that year and a half online remote learning, we knew at the end of last school year that if we didn't come back, we were going to be faced with huge we were going to be faced with a lot of trauma. And we had been seeing and experiencing the trauma of just our kids telling us that they lost people. They lost people in their family. They lost parents. They themselves were sick. We had, an array of student experience. And I think the most significant experiences that I felt for our students were those experiences where we had students who never had for, their high school career, didn't have a homecoming. They didn't have a prom.
Yeah.
They didn't have a graduation. They didn't have those milestones that we all reflect back on as like the good times, right? That you shared with your friends and your family. They lost out on all of that. And, I think the long term, the long-term issues that may arise are yet to be noticed. I think that there's going to be, some time for those students to really, for it to all set in, I've had students, my niece graduated this past school year, and there's this resentment, like, they get to do this and we didn't, and beyond that, there's this there's a lot of students who are just so excited to be back that they're just like,
Right.
woohoo, just and so you have to walk that line very delicately, because you have to understand they haven't felt this good in a long time. I have a younger nephew that's online still. Our community's still on lockdown. And every night when we pray and he prays and he says, I just pray I can go back to school. Oh my God, it breaks my heart, But, and it's not funny, but he's so cute because it's meant, it's a real for him. He misses that. And so, he's a little guy, he's 8 years old. But what is that? How does that impact him? What does that do to his ability to communicate and to build relationships and to socialize? We talked about this Zoom. This is not how Indigenous people communicate. It's the spirit to spirit. It's this coming together. And this is so disconnected for our people. This way of communicating is so disconnected.
Yeah, well, I just tell people, back when I was at that school age, it would have been in the 80s. And if this happened then, I don't know what we would have done, because we didn't even have computers. We had typewriters back then. So we're, in a lot of ways, technology has been a blessing for a lot of us, but what we need is the infrastructure for the technology to hit the reservations as well. Certainly where I come from, there's no Wi-Fi where Black Mountain, where my home site is on the reservation. But I wanted to ask two more questions before we open it up to the audience and hear a little bit from our beautiful Elena here. Is with your school, I know schools have a lot of clubs, and with the millennials, they've done some significant, they've jumped out into the world in a way that our pioneers of our different clubs and ways of being has done. So I wanted to ask you about the Santa Fe Indian School. Do you guys have an LGBTQIA+2 club? And if so, how do you support your Two-Spirit students? Because I know that a lot of youth have been coming out and just really saying, this is who I am, and to the parents and to the elders, really brave. So how do you guys embrace that?
We have a Born Braves club, and that's our LGBTQ club and organization. It took too long for Santa Fe Indian School to respond to the need, but we have an organization in place. They're amazing students. They're brave. And so their name is Born Brave, but they are brave. They're brave in a lot of ways. And I know that when I was growing up, it wasn't accepted. You just kept things like that to yourself, I am very proud of these students and happy that they have the courage, because I don't know, if in my day and time, if I would have had the courage to do something as brave as they are, and really taking pride in who they are and their identity. And I think that's a huge step moving forward. And, we'll continue to support them. They are valued members of our community, and we need to do our part to ensure that they know that.
Wow. Yeah, I'm shocked when I go back to the reservation, the Navajo Nation, and see Dene College. They also have a Two-Spirit Club there, and they even have a lot of stuff happening now. I'm really proud of our people for stepping out like this. And I wanted to ask you so many more questions. And lately, I've been hearing a lot of buzzwords going around about cultural appropriation. And I just was wondering if you could hit on that just for just about a minute or two or whatever, to just what does cultural appropriation mean to Indigenous lenses? Because a lot of people misunderstand that term, and it would be great to learn a little bit more from from your standpoint.
Wow, that's a great question. Excuse me, I think as somebody who grew up, just right behind you, I was in middle school in 86 and 87, I believe. And I remember growing up, and there were all these teams that were Reds, like the teams that are now changing their names. But if you remember the old Cleveland Indians mascot,
Yep.
oh my gosh, I used to just cringe when I would see that that mascot, and I just thought to myself, how do our people allow outside people to portray us in this way? And it really it stuck with me throughout my life, and I have been on the waves of change, and I've been an advocate. I know in my younger, more radical days, we would go raise hell at different games, and out in we spent a lot of time in DC, when I was young and out in college, protesting the Redskins. But there was so many others. Stanford was another. You think about the universities that have, and I really want to thank the universities, because they were at the forefront of change. They really initiated, where you had these major organizations like the major baseball leagues and the NFL, who are all economically driven through capitalism and exploitation of even their own players. So so I want to just give a shout out to the universities in the United States who initiated the change. Right. One, recognizing that it's wrong, that it's a form of discrimination, stereotype, and it starts at that larger scale, but then it feeds people's mindset in such a negative way that they don't even know that what they're saying is wrong. I was a coach, like Coach Morrison, for a couple years here, but I played, and I was an athlete for many years. And and the shouts from the stands, go home, you dirty Indian, those kinds of things. And you learn to cope, you learn to deal. You're just like, I think the worst we do is throw them the finger when our coaches aren't looking or whatever. But at the end of the day, it rests in your heart. It rests in your heart that people don't respect you nor your identity and what's most important to you, your culture, right? Who you represent in those settings. And for Pueblo people and indigenous people across the United States, we're a very proud people. We have survived. We are resilient. We are the first Americans. And there's no denying that. And for me to be able to live from that blatant racism and misrepresentation, cultural appropriation, seeing, the sexy Pocahontas Halloween costume suit, to, seeing the Florida Seminoles, doing the tomahawk, and today for this generation, and I'm sure future generations, to see the acknowledgement of the impacts and the effects of that type of stereotyping and discrimination that is really rooted in some underlying racial tendencies that I think the United States tries to cover up with propaganda and such, that it's not there.
Right.
But for indigenous people who live it, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, we see our brothers and sisters there getting beat up on the side of the street, and it's still here. But yet, nobody wants to acknowledge it. No one wants to take ownership and say, this is wrong. We need to respect indigenous people. We need to, celebrate indigenous people, and to honor indigenous people for all that they've contributed to not only the United States, but to the world.
That's right. Well, gosh, thank you so much for expanding on that, because it is probably the most misunderstood terminology to a lot of people that are ignorant, that don't understand, and respect is respect, and we know what that is. So the final question I want to ask you is, what does thriving in purpose mean to you?
Well, that, as a Pueblo woman, I'm driven by, like I said, my core values, and everything that I am is because of a community that raised me, that shared with me, that taught me, that, gifted me with the strength and the humility and the foresight to want to do better for them. When I think of my success, I think of how I contribute back. How does the blessings that I have been able to embrace, how do I share that? How do I find ways to gift and to inspire and to motivate and love and nurture and foster? How do I use all my blessings to do that for all of my communities and my people, indigenous people worldwide? And so that's what drives me, and that's what I want to do now and in the future.
This is why we need more women leaders. This is so beautiful. You got all the success and you just want to give it back. That's what I'm talking about. That's so beautiful. That's our theme, thriving in purpose. And that's Indigenous Ways on a global scale. Our beautiful Elena here, her Southern Hemisphere Maori Samoan relations, her gift back to them is this platform. They can tune right in and hear about us on this side in the Northern Hemisphere. And I'm going to pass it on to the beautiful Elena.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Superintendent Abeyta. We're very blessed to have you kicking off our series. We had a 3-month sabbatical last month, which was September. We highlighted 11 of the 135 people that have come through the doorway since we started April the 1st. So thank you for kicking us off, and very powerful with that. So what I want to get into, I know you're wondering, who's going to be coming next month. We are very, very honored to have
our beautiful brother and sister Sihasin.
Sihasin, who will be here.
Means hope.
So they will also be blessing us in the circle. We are beaming out the third Wednesday of each month. So put in your calendars, if you haven't already, the 17th of November, same time, same channel, same place. Whether you're here in Zoom doing live, thank you all those people that are here, or you're those amazing people that are beaming out through the incredible social media. So Sita Hassan will be here with Jenda and also her brother Clayson Benali. They actually come from Big Mountain, which is just across from Black Mountain, where Tash, her mother, Kathy, who is from where they're from. So we're looking forward to that next month.
Mom was born on Big Mountain.
Oh, there you go. I love it. So as I was saying before, we've been very blessed in this virtual events, the Indigenous Ways virtual events, to support over 135 presenters. That's deaf and hard of hearing, our LGBTQIA2+, or what we call Two-Spirit, and Native American Indigenous presenters. You can go to our website, IndigenousWays.org. They're all archived in there. If you're looking at us on social media, please subscribe or support our pages and like us. This has been possible because of our sponsors, so I want to give them a shout out as well. The Native American Advise Fund through the Santa Fe Community Foundation, the Northern Rio Rancho Grande National Heritage Area, the New Mexico Arts, WestAF, and the National Endowment of the Arts that have made this possible. Also, we are very, very pleased and proud. All of these shows have ASL interpreters. They are free, making access available for all. We purposely did that simply because of all that was happening for everyone. And so that's what was happening there, making all of the access available. Also want to give a shout out and thank to our board members and individual donors. If you do want to donate and keep us with this habit of supporting all the presenters coming to you, you can go to our PayPal, Indigenous Ways PayPal, or else we've also got Venmo, so you can do the QRL code. There's also, if you go to our website, IndigenousWays.org, there is the donate button where you can do that. Or if you're a bit like me, not into the electronics, we have our postal code, which is 4073 Santa Fe, New Mexico 87502. So with that, this is the great time. If you are in our Zoom, and I want to remind you, we're beaming out live. So if you're in witness protection, it's probably not one of the times to be doing this. But if you want to come in live and say hi to Ms. Abeyta, or just share a comment, you can turn on your videos. If you are, or if you're a bit shy, you can put a comment in Zoom. If you are beaming out through our social media, now is the time to do that. So while people are sorting all of that out and trying to figure out all of their things, we're just going to zap over. And actually, while we're doing that, today, hey, you
Hello,
wonderful pair.
Abby and Carlin.
While people are figuring out where their cameras and things are, today is the 20th of October. And so while people are figuring this out, I just want to share 4 years ago on this day, the 20th of October, I went down to Albuquerque with a slew of people, and I got sworn in with my third citizenship
Yes!
to be an American citizen behind Australian citizenship and also born and bred in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So that's what happened in this time today.
Wow, I forgot about that.
Yeah, beamed
That
up
was-
on. So I am a citizen.
She's the hope for America. We need more Kiwis here in America. So if you're beaming in from Australia and New Zealand, come to America. You guys are cool.
So, while people are finding their voices and also their microphones, and it works a bit like popcorn if you've been in here, I just want to say this. Michelle Morman, and we're also doing another run to Black Mountain. So, Michelle, your wonderful diapers will be going up in November. But Michelle says, thank you for bringing back the Wisdom Circles. Right on, Michelle. Thank you.
Right on.
And Angelina O'Willow, who is also one of the presenters, a deaf Hispanic two-spirit presenters who was in here in the Wisdom
she's
Circle.
in Seattle.
She says, "Oh, great, you're back. I will follow." So big shout out to you, Angelina.
All right, everybody. Not everybody at the same time. Who wants to ask the first question to Miss Abeyta?
Oh, and then while you're thinking about that, Casey Horn, thanks so much for beaming in. Do you want to read that, Tosh?
So Miss Abeyta, Casey is in a secondary educational bachelor degree process. And when she finishes that, she wants to ask you for tips on teaching Indigenous wellness for her future students. And she says, thank you so much for your knowledge.
Awesome. Well, I think a lot of what we teach and how we teach is how we learned. I as a teacher, I always went back to myself as a student and thought through, like, what were those activities or those learning opportunities that drew me in and wanted and like motivated me to want to learn, right? Or to want to attain a skill. And so a lot of times you need to look within, and especially when you're working with your own students, whether you're Pueblo, Saskatchewan, whatever tribe, wherever you're working from, when you're working with your own people, it's easy, right? Because your people, how they learn, what interests them and what doesn't, and you adapt your teaching. When you're teaching to Indigenous students that may not be from your village or your tribe, you still draw on those things, but then you highlight very specific things from their culture, so they feel acknowledged, they feel honored, and they feel that you're making a purposeful connection. And once you get them to trust you and to know that you're there to love and support them, they'll do anything. That's my biggest tip.
That's right. Get that trust. That's beautiful. So Eliza, who's a counselor at the Institute of American Indian Arts, just says, amazing. Thank you for all you shared, Miss Abeyta. I can feel your love and all the love here at the Wisdom Circle. Thank you, Eliza. We love you. We miss you. Can't wait to see you. And another comment from our beautiful board member, Mr. Homer Hubble from the Dene tribe. And he says, Njone. Oh, yeah, Homer. Njone yet. Our beautiful sister from Boston, Alma Dell, to everyone. Thank you for letting us see the inside stories. Thank you, Alma. I can't wait to talk to you. You're a very knowledgeable sister in Boston. So much love to you. Thank you for joining us. And we'd like to hear from Abby this evening. Abby, is this your first time in our show? And also, do you have any questions for Miss Abeyta?
I just want to say this has been phenomenal and so enlightening and so loving. Hi, this is wonderful. Yes, it is my first time signing in. Thank you.
So
Thanks
just,
so much, Abby, for blessing us in the circle and being with us this evening.
just to let you know, Miss Abeyta, Abby is a doctor of psychology. She just moved here from the East Coast and is settling very nicely into Santa Fe with our beautiful brother Carlin. And
Yeah.
we want to hear from everybody. So, Annette, would you like to say
Annette,
anything?
great to see you.
I just want to say thank you and thank you for supporting the GLBT and thank you. I really love the speech that you had. Thank you very much. Hi, Elena and Tosh.
Great to see you, Annette.
All right, and on to Donna. Donna, we love you. How's Columbus going?
Yeah, and those chooks.
Oh, the chooks are good.
That means chickens.
That's chickens translated for everyone.
It's chicken in New Zealand. Well, we get about a dozen eggs every 2 days, so that's pretty good. The weather went cold, and now it's nice and pleasant. It's in the 70s. We're going to get rain tomorrow, so it's fall. But we're doing pretty well, I think, and looking forward to more wisdom circles. We love you. Love you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks so much
We love
for
you
that,
too.
Donna.
And guess who I see here? Penny. Penny, we want to hear from you. What's up? Because then we're going to hear from Kitty and Arletta.
Say hi. Thanks.
Hi, thanks, Miss Abeyta, Superintendent Abeyta, for your wonderful talk tonight. I am a teacher at the Indian School, and I just have to say, it is one of the most wonderful places I have ever been, and this is like my 100th year to teach, so I can say that. But I love the students. I love the campus. I love my coworkers. I love everything about the Indian School. It's a really wonderful place to be, and our kids are so talented in so many ways. So
We love you too, Penny and Terry.
Yes.
Right on.
really
Thanks,
do.
Miss Penn.
All right. And let's go on to our beautiful board member, Kitty Moss.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry I had to come on a little bit late, but thank you, Superintendent Abeyta. That was really wonderful. And thank you, Elena and Tosh. It's such a gift, and I feel so grateful to be here. Thank you. And Tosh, you look especially beautiful.
Oh, Kitty, so do you. Thank you so much. And let's hear from our beautiful sister, our deaf sister, Arletta from Lukachukai.
Lukachukai.
Hey, Arletta.
Arletta.
Hi. Congratulations, Arletta. You got running water finally. Arletta's got running water and electricity, everybody. And everybody on this platform has contributed to Arletta. Thank you. Arletta, speak to us, please. We love you.
Okay. So what I was saying before is, I missed what you were telling me before just because I was trying to fix the screen. So what did you say, Tosh?
Congratulations. You have running water and electricity after 69 years.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, finally. I can now use running water. I've not used running water since the 80s, really. And, now I'm using running water in my 80s, and it's an amazing feeling.
Wow. We can't wait to see you in a few weeks. Arletta will be coming to visit you. So we got some goodies for you from our beautiful people from Indigenous Ways. So we'll see you in a few weeks. Let's see, who else have we not heard from? Okay, Coach Terry, what's up?
Coach!
Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you, Superintendent Abeyta. That was wonderful. I'm glad you shared your special gifts with everyone on our Wisdom Circle, and thus the word wisdom. I think that our school is one of the best kept secrets all over, and hopefully through more presentations and leaders from you like to speak with it, that we can say the specialness of our campus. And I just appreciate that I'm get to work there and learn so much. I've learned so much more and brought more gifts for me. And that's just a blessing. And thank you to our board members and a great first Wednesday showing. And what a great way to start with education for our first big meeting back. So thanks again. And we'll be seeing you guys for a month from now.
Right
on, Terry.
Thanks, Coach T.
All right, and then we've got the legend of the day, our beautiful Musawa, who is the founder of We Moon Calendar and many, many things, Women's Land, 3 different places in America, and we just love you, Musawa. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing? Do you have any questions for Miss Abeyta?
Hi, thank you for that great greeting. I just want to say I love that you're back with the wisdom circles. It's so incredible, all that you're sharing. And Miss Abeyta, you know what I love when you said that women are natural teachers, because of course that's true. Who do we learn from the moment we're born? Are women, and that's where the greatest teaching takes place, in the home, when before you even get to school. So thank you for that extra boost. Anyway, I can relate to getting running water. I live on New Mexico Women's Land. It's a Women's Land Trust in Tasuki up in the mountains, and we have not had water for 40 years, and we finally this year got our well, and we don't quite have running water yet. It doesn't yet get to our little houses here and there, but we have it on the land, and it's such a blessing. It's really wonderful. Water is life.
Water is life, and welcome home, Musawa. I also want to take this moment and thank our interpreters for this evening. We have Zol, who is interpreting at the moment, and also Chris Asiano, making access available for all. We appreciate you. We appreciate each and every one of you for your sacred time, whether you're here live or you're watching the recorded event, whether this be your 3rd, 4th, 5th time watching it, because the medicine that Miss Abeyta shared was so powerful. But with that, please, tonight would not have been possible without the incredible wisdom and wisdoms from Ms. Abeyta. So please, let's all give it up for Ms. Abeyta!
And we just want to give a shout out to our beautiful board member, Judy Shapiro. Thank you for being with us tonight, Judy. Do you have one last word before we read one more comment and then sign off?
Oh, I have not much except for to bring in Sam the Zoom cat.
Sam the Zoom cat.
And Miss Abeyta, Judy is a federal Indian policy lawyer, so she's been working with Native American over hundreds of tribes for close to 40 years. So we're really blessed to have her on our board. Thank you, Judy, for all your work with the Indigenous people and all the fights you've had on our behalf.
And Phoenix, so great to see you. Right on. And so
but I got to say one more thing. Over here on the sidebar, you see it says Julia. We call her Jitter. She's Lakota. And she says, happy anniversary, Elena. Thank you, Miss Abeyta. Everything you said really inspired me as a mom to 5 Indigenous kiddos. Your heart for our community really shows. And they might be at your school, Miss Abeyta, because they're all here in this town.
They're all welcome.
Right.
They're all welcome. Bring them all.
Totally.
Love you,
so
kids.
we'll look forward to seeing you all 3rd Wednesday, which will be November the 17th with
Sihasin.
They're wicked. Let's please give it up one more time for me.